Hi, and welcome to Music and Gear. Today we got a Volgoa. Ordered this off of Amazon. It is a beautiful guitar, and I've actually been looking at this guitar on Amazon for several months. And it would come in stock, then it would not be in stock, then it would come in stock. This time I got myself one. So like we always do, we are going to completely go over this guitar. We're going to check the neck, we're going to check the frets, we're going to check the electronics, we're going to check the general fit and finish of the guitar. Let's see what $199 gets you on this particular model. Okay, I have the guitar up on our little stool here. We're going to kind of go over the general fit and finish of the guitar. To start with, the top is some type of an epoxy pour coat. And they're trying to emulate like a flame top. It's very pretty. It goes from red up to the yellow, and it has some nice details on it. It's quite nice. It is a high gloss, so it is polished up very nicely. They do have a little bit of an arm carve right here on the body. And there is a binding that goes all the way around the top of the guitar. Now the edge right here, they didn't really use a router here. If they did, it was a 32nd just to break the edge. The issue that I'm seeing on this edge is it was most likely hand sanded or done with a mechanical palm sander, and it is not consistent. If you look at the guitar face on, you can see more of the binding in certain spots than others. Like here, they didn't round it over as much as they did here. So you see the binding looking straight at it more so than here. But feeling it, you don't feel the difference. It's more of a visual thing because you have the red, then the binding. And you can physically see where the binding looks like it's getting thicker because they sanded more of the top finish off, exposing the top edge of the binding. But it feels smooth. Our top finish, like I said, it's very glossy. The guitar did suffer some damage in shipping. Right here, there's a crack in the top finish. It goes from the volume knob over to our switch. And I'm not too sure if the camera would pick that crack up or not. But if you look between the black switch and the volume knob, that's where the crack is. On the back of the guitar, we have a belly carve right here. And they've done the same back here. Now, the round over back here looks more consistent, like they used an 1/8 inch round over. But again, there's some sanding errors. It's not consistent. Right here, they've sanded more on the horn, and then right here. They've put a small chamfer in for better access to the higher notes. And they've really rounded over this heel joint on the body where the neck bolts in. It's almost a 3/4 inch round over. And that's to make the guitar more comfy to grab hold of. It does feel a little butt heavy as far as holding it in this position, but it is still comfortable to hold. The screws here holding the neck on, they do have a bugle bottom with a panhead top, and the washers are angled as well. So when the bugle screw goes down, it makes contact to the side of the washer. And they are inset into the guitar. I am not going to say that they're all even. These two are pretty much the same, and these two are the same. But these two do sit higher up on the body than the first two. Our cover plates are routed into the body. Our large plate here has a problem. This plate is getting caught by the electronics cover plate. I'll pick that up. And you can see there's a bulge where it's catching the electronics plate. I have not had the covers off, but I would assume you would have to sand this plate just a little bit to allow this plate to go down flush. It doesn't want to pop in either. So there's an error in this plate. This plate here is setting about 1 millimeter below the body, and they're using panhead screws to hold all the plates in. The buttons for the straps, this one is setting square and true, but it almost looks like it's on the horn just a little bit that direction. It's fine. This button here is not following the seam in the body. If you look right here, there's a seam in the body, and the button is to that direction of the seam. Looking down the seam on the body, it does follow the neck on the guitar. Sometimes these import guitar companies, the wood seam will go crossways, and then they put a translucent finish on it, and it looks really strange. If you get it close, it looks good. This one, they've got it right in the center. So that's nice to see on a sub $200 guitar. Our neck pocket here looks pretty good. This edge here looks nice and tight. I do see a slight crack between the neck and the body going towards the bridge, about a 32nd of an inch. And our neck pocket right here, there's a crack at the heel and becomes tight towards the top of the neck. The neck fitting into that pocket, I don't see a crack here. So if there is a shim between the neck and the body, it's going to be a very small shim. We do have a very large seat on this neck where they didn't ramp this sanding back to the body. I'm going to say that's almost 5/8 of an inch between the body and where the ramp on the neck starts. That's a very large heel. Looking down the neck, we do have placement knots across the top. And the dots on the front of the guitar, they are just really, really pretty. This is probably my third Volgoa that just have really nice placement dots as far as the figuring and the color in the neck. These have a very deep, nice look to them. There's some pinks, blues, blacks, green. There's a lot of nice color in those dots. And the routing on the dots into the fingerboard material, it's done very well. I'm not seeing any black epoxy or filler where they've misdrilled and set the dot. Those are nice. Our neck feel, the neck feels good. From the roasted maple up to the rosewood fingerboard, I don't feel a transition. It's a nice satin feel neck, so it's not a high gloss, it is a satin finish. And it's nicely done. It feels nice and smooth. Our transition to the headstock Again, it's very smooth. I can feel the Volgoa logo on the headstock. But all the edges are broken. That's a nicely done neck. We also have locking tuning keys, and we have 2 string trees on the front. As far as our frets, these are the ball end frets. And running my finger down the fretboard, there are absolutely no sharp frets. All the ball ends are nicely done. Now here's the thing that happens with most of these ball end fret guitars. When we look down the neck, how even are the frets set? This one, believe it or not, isn't that bad. It's not the best we've seen, but it's not bad. They align rather well. That is something very, very hard to do. I'm looking at the ones that look long compared to the other side, and it just looks like some of them are miscut. It's not bad, you know. 64th. None of them are really sticking out to where I would say, yeah, that's a bad job. They're not perfect, but it's not horrible. Up top are 2 pickups. This one is setting a little crooked in the body, and this one is setting good. It's a nice set. Sometimes you can just grab them and move them, but this one always returns to the crooked location. The route itself for the pickup looks nice. It's a sharp route. They did not ease the corner of this routing whatsoever, so it's very sharp. The route for the selector, again, it's nicely done. I'm not seeing any errors where the machine come through, and it's a nice straight cut. The 2 screws here, it's a bugle bottom with a pan top. So this screw and this screw both feel and look like they're setting up. That's probably because they didn't use a chamfering bit to come down and chamfer the body for that screw to set down flush. That is something that could be easily resolved. Does that cause a problem that way? No, it's more just an aesthetic issue. There is a nice knurling on the knobs. It's a lot of grip on the knobs. They are chrome. And turning the knobs, they feel smooth. The volume knob, let's check our tone. The tone feels a little stiffer as far as turning it, but it is smooth. And if you're a pinky player, you're reaching down with your pinky and you're turning the knob, you can turn it, but it's not a friction-free knob. It's going to take some effort. It's not as bad as some. I would say that this is from friction-free to stiff. This is right in the center. The tremolo is a 2-point tremolo system. So we have 2 posts, and the screws look nice. As far as the screws on the top of the saddles, it's not super smooth, but I'm not catching anything. I don't feel anything sharp. I do feel the saddles, but there's nothing there sharp. But I can feel it. So the edge corner of the saddle is just the edge is just broken. They haven't chamfered it or done anything of that nature. So you do feel the saddle variation going up, creating the radius. But there's nothing wrong with it. They've rounded the back edge here so you don't have a square corner. And the back screws feel nice. There's nothing sharp. All in all, the hardware looks pretty good on the guitar. And from the factory, I don't know if you can see that, the bridge is set a little down towards the body. So it's not perfectly perpendicular to the body. And that's a spring adjustment. I'm being super picky. It's not off much. Usually these guitars come with the tremolo up against the body. They haven't adjusted that. This one looks like someone did actually take the time to get it close. So what that means is you could actually pull up on the bar of this tremolo a little bit to increase the pitch of the note. It's nice. I'm not seeing the route hole where the block goes through the body. So it is routed out nicely for this bridge. I think that's pretty much going to cover our general fit and finish. We're going to go over the frets on our next section. We're going to put a straight edge on the guitar. We're going to check the radius and we're going to check the fret feel. So let's get to that part. Alright, I have the guitar ready to check the neck on it. And just playing around with the guitar during the first couple sections, the neck feels flat. So I've picked out 3 gauges that I think might be the radius, a 14, a 15, and a 16. We're going to start with our 14. Put the 14 down here. And I can see a crack in the center. It is touching on either side. So it is definitely not a 14. But we'll slide it up and just to double check the top. No, there's a crack in the center at the top as well. So let's go to our 15. And the 15 looks really close. It is touching on either side. It looks like it's touching in the center, but I do see a little bit of a black line. It looks about the same at the top, so let's try our 16. That is hitting in the center, and I do see just a little bit of a black line on either side. It's about the same up here. I'm thinking the 15 fits really well. So it doesn't look to be a compound radius. It looks like it's a 15 top and bottom. Okay, we have our gauge here, and I'm going to assume this is a 25.5. Put our gauge on the guitar. And from the factory, the neck does have a little bit of relief put in it. I'm going to say it's probably 0.6, 0.7 millimeters of relief. Well, right there at that angle. We're going to call it 0.8. That's actually about where I try to set my guitars. That's where I like it. I like a little bit of relief in the neck, and this one's about where I would set the guitar if someone brought one in for service. So now let's check the factory string height. On the 12th, on the low E, we have 0.06. No, I'm sorry. 0.080 on the low E. And on the high E, we have 0.070. So that's a fraction high compared to what I see mostly. I mostly see 0.07 on the low E and 0.06 on the high E. It's still not horrible. It's still a playable action height. Now, for everyone's favorite part, we're going to go into squirrel mode. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to check all these frets with the fret rocker. I'll go out of squirrel mode if I find a bad fret. And right there, it has just a little bit of rock. Very, very little, but there is just a fraction right there. And again, right there, again, it's very, very little, but there is a little bit of rock there. So that's actually pretty good. We had 2 spots, and it was only one small spot in the center of the fret. And it's very little rock. It's not something, if someone brought a guitar in for me to look at, it's not something that I would ever repair. Unless the customer just had to have it perfect. That little bit, unless you slam the action down to like 0.05 or 04 on the low E, you would never have a problem with it. And it's in the center of the fret. So even if you slam the action, I doubt very seriously that would ever cause a problem. It's very, very little rock, just in 2 spots. So I'm going to call that good. Alright, I now have the guitar plugged into my Robertson strobe tuner. We are going to check the intonation on the guitar, and we're going to check our first fretted note. And that'll tell us how well the nuts cut and how well they set the intonation at the factory. We're going to start on our low E. And there are low E's in tune. 12th. Open. 12th. So the low E intonation is a little high. Open. First fretted note. and our first fretted note is a little sharp. Open. Yep, it's sharp enough to where it's going to F sharp occasionally. Try our A. A on the 12th. Open. 12th. That one is really good. Could be just a fraction flat. I don't know, that's pretty good. Open. Let's try our first fretted note on the A. That one is really good. Open. First fretted note. Yeah, the A is spot on. There's our D. D on the 12th. And the D looks like it's sharp. Yes, the D intonation is sharp. Open. First fretted note. And the first fretted note is very close. It's just a fraction sharp. Yeah, that is very close. There's our G. G on the 12th. Open. 12th. And the G is a little sharp on the intonation. Open. First fretted note. And our G sharp, first fretted note on the G, is sharp. There's our B. B on the 12th. Open. 12th. And our B is a fraction high on the intonation as well. Very, very little, but it is a fraction sharp. Let's try our B first fretted note. That is very good. Open. First fretted note. Just a fraction sharp. That's actually really good. There's our high E. High E on the 12th. And just a fraction sharp. Open. 12th. Yes, it is a fraction sharp. Let's try our high E on the first fretted note. Open. And it is just a fraction flat. Just a fraction. That's actually pretty good. On intonation and stuff like that, it's best to be a little on the flat side. So all in all, the setup on this guitar from the factory really isn't that bad. There was only actually 2 strings that needed some nut work to get this guitar spot on. In reality, it's pretty good. Okay, I have my calipers here. We're going to get some measurements on the neck. I have loosened the first 3 strings. But to start with, let's get a width. And at the nut, we have 43 millimeters. At our 12th, we have 53 millimeters. And then at the 24th, we have 58 millimeters. Now let's get some thicknesses, because this neck is a little on the chunky side. So let's see how thick it is. I am on the fretboard. I'm not on top of the fret. So from the top of the fretboard to the bottom of the neck, we have 21 millimeters. Now let's do to the top of the fret. And to the top of the fret we have 22.5. On the 12th, we have 23 millimeters, and we should have 24.5 to the top of the fret, but we'll double check. And we do 24.5 to the top of the fret. So it's not super thick, but it does have some chunk to it. While we have the strings loose, we can really pull them back and we can look at the frets. And these frets look really nice. I'm not seeing any scratches in the frets. They have been well cleaned after the leveling process. And the frets feel smooth with the strings. They're definitely not scratchy. These frets aren't super polished. It's not like a mirror finish on the frets, but they have definitely been polished. I would say the majority of players are going to like this fret feel. Here's our scale. I have the scale zeroed out and we're on grams. So I'm going to set the guitar on the scale. And the scale is reading 3,420 grams. 22 grams now. So 3,422 grams. And it's reading 7 pounds, 8.7 ounces. Alright, I have the guitar plugged into our multimeter. We are in the bridge position. And our bridge pickup is reading 11.14. In the center position, both humbuckers were reading 5.45. And our neck humbucker is reading 10.44. This guitar does not have the ability to split the coil on either the bridge or the neck humbucker. Alright, I have the guitar face down on the stool. We're going to take the cover plates off and check out what's inside. First thing we're going to do is take off the tremolo cover and see how well the routes look, what the springs look like, and the ground connection. And if you remember earlier in the video, we saw that this cover plate wasn't fitting properly down because of this plate. So now we'll get a good idea of what's actually going on here. And you can see how it's warped the plate. Now in here we do have our 3 springs, and they've ran them towards the center, then to the outside connections here. Here's our ground wire coming over, and it's bonded in the center. And that solder joint looks okay. There's a decent sheen on it. Here's our adjustment screws, and they are fully threaded, so there's quite a bit of adjustment there. Our route in here looks good. I'm not seeing any step down marks. There is a little bit of a texture in here, so I'm not sure if that's a shielding paint or not. Our block, it's not the smallest I've seen. It's definitely not the largest. It looks nice. We can't take the block off and weigh it and check the mass, but it's definitely not the cheapest block I've seen. It looks like a decent quality block for a stock guitar. So now let's take the electronics cover off and see what that looks like in there. And the cover plates are definitely tight as far as the way they fit. That pops in. I mean, it's a snug fit. It's a little too snug. You can see I'm having problems getting it pulled out. Our electronics cavity, I can see that they've bonded across here, and then our center position. There's a decent sheen on these connections. That one's really good right there. And these are the micro pots. And here's our cap. This one looks good all the way around. This one's not bad. The connections here, though, I mean, they're nice connections. I would have bent these tabs over and made them touch instead of bridging the wire across. I mean, that's acceptable. The only thing I'm seeing here is this connection here is pretty sloppy. But I'm sure it functions fine. It would never cause a problem. There is a decent sheen to the connection. This one's a little dull. But that's the only connection I see that doesn't have a nice sheen. So all in all, I'd say the wiring in here, as far as the bonding and the connections, it looks good. Now let's take the jack out and see what the jack connections look like. here's our jack connections. And both connections look good. There's a nice sheen to both of those connections. And we've seen this jack before, the white nylon separated jack. We've seen that jack quite a few times in the sub $200 guitars. And there's a little bit of pressure to the connection point there. Some pushing on it. And we can see in here, this is compound from where they polished the guitar. That's pretty normal. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put all the cover plates back on, then we can move on to the demo section. And I was able to get this cover down correctly and flush to the body. So all I had to do was pull this cover over this way a little bit and push that cover that way. And then I did in sequence as far as tightening. I put all the screws in lightly and then went back and tightened them all on the last pass. So now let's go to the demo section. Okay, I have the guitar now plugged into my solid state Silverline Black Star amp, and we want to go through and just kind of check the frets as far as playing individual notes. I don't do this on all reviews. It's something that I definitely want to start doing on all the reviews, and sometimes I forget to do it. So let's go through and check all the notes. Now I was in squirrel mode during that, and I can say the low E, the B string, and the high E are okay. We do have some buzziness in the A, but this string, kind of sounds like a sitar. We have some buzziness right there on the open. So there's some issues here. A couple of these are saddle rattles from the rake angle. And what's confusing me is this guitar has a pretty steep rake angle, but it sounds like a saddle issue. A couple of the I'm trying to mute up here past the nut. Sometimes you can do that and it'll go away. That means the nut is miscut. So that has to be something either here or here. This video isn't about repairing it, it's about how the guitar was sent to me. So I'm disclosing the issues that I'm finding. The frets themselves, according to the fret rocker, were pretty close. That doesn't mean that it's perfect. I have had guitars that when you put the gauge, this gauge on it, and you check the neck, and you get the neck perfectly straight, and you go through, and then you check it with your fret rocker, you'll still end up with a couple strings that will buzz on the frets. In those cases, I'll go back through with a StewMac fret kisser and just kind of clean up the neck, okay, if you find that issue. There's a couple ways you can look at this. If you take your gauge and you straighten your neck, now here's the trick. This gauge is setting on the wood of the guitar fretboard. Who's to say when the factory did their leveling that neck was perfectly straight when they leveled the frets? It could have been off, 0.1, 0.2 millimeters. They've leveled the frets with that neck with just a little relief in that neck. Now you've went and you've straightened the neck perfectly straight to the wood, and that's not how the frets were leveled. Okay, so now you have a crown in the neck. It's actually bowed back because the guitar doesn't care about the wood part of the fretboard. It cares about the fret part. The string is riding over the frets. Okay, that's what it's buzzing on. In this case, I would go through with a straight edge directly on the frets, and I would see if there's an error across the whole fretboard. Okay, then go into your saddles and see if there's a saddle issue, and then look at your nut. Our first fretted note on this guitar wasn't horrible, but if when you're in here cleaning this up, you can go in and you can make your tuning on your nut cut and it may go away. I'm just disclosing that I'm finding a lot of buzzing from the factory on this guitar. One last scenario. I have had guitars come in, and for whatever reason, that particular string on that guitar just buzzed. You put a different manufacturer on there, or even sometimes a different gauge string, and you'll start getting buzzing. What's concerning to me is this guitar buzzes and our action height. Our action height is high enough. We shouldn't be having any problems. We really shouldn't. This is not a low action. The buzzy string is set at 0.060. So it's not like the action is slammed on the guitar. Okay, now let's move forward and actually hear what the guitar sounds like. Okay, I have the amp switched over to a clean channel. We're on warm clean. And I have the volume all the way up, the tones all the way up, and we are in the bridge position. Center position. Neck position. Let's just do some basic 12-bar blues. bridge position. Now we're going to our center position. Just our neck position. Okay, I now have the amp switched over to the crunchy channel. We're in our bridge position. Again, everything's all the way up. Center position. Up to our neck position. Okay, that's going to conclude our small demo on the VSR1 from Volgoa. What are my final thoughts on the guitar? The guitar plays nice, even with its high action. It frets well and plays easy. The frets feel smooth. I didn't have any playing issues with the guitar. It's comfortable. It does sit against your body well. The arm carve and the belly carve make the guitar comfortable to hold. The big issue is the buzzing frets. There's a lot of buzz on some of the strings. You probably heard that in the demo section. It's buzzy. But the good part of the guitar, we'll go over the good, are these tuners. Volgoa branded tuners. This is the third guitar from Volgoa that I've reviewed with these Volgoa branded locking tuners. They are really nice tuners. These are as good as any aftermarket tuner that you're going to put on this guitar for really any amount of money. They're very smooth. They work good. They're not super quick. The gearing is right to where you can make small adjustments, and the locking mechanism works really well. So they've nailed these tuners. As long as Volgoa uses these tuners, you won't have to replace them. The next issue, or good part of the guitar, the pickups really sound nice in this guitar. They have a nice clean sound. They're warm. They take distortion well. It's got good pickups on it. The electronics seem to function very well. They're smooth. Good electronics as well. I think the main problem with this guitar is just the buzzy notes. And that's easily fixed. You can go through and you can trim the nut. You can do some work on the saddles. You can get that buzz out of the guitar. But as it was sent to me, the guitar has a lot of buzzy frets. And I'm saying buzzy frets because we did go back and look at the frets. The fret leveling and crowning on these frets is actually pretty good. The neck is pretty straight. So there's another issue going on there. I'm going to say the rake angle coming in from the back side of the guitar into the bridge, or the nut. And I have not taken the time to investigate into it. I just know it's buzzing right now. If you've bought one of these guitars and you've had a completely different experience with it, you bought it and just nothing was right on it, leave a comment down below. But did you buy one of these guitars and yours doesn't have the buzz issue? I find that it's a little peculiar the way this guitar is set up that it buzzes. So let me know, did you get a good one? Did you get a bad one? And as always, if you like content like this, please hit the like button and leave me a note down in the comments. Hey man, I like the way you do your detailed, reviews. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. When I see the subscriber count go up, it makes me feel good. It lets me know that I'm reviewing the guitars that you guys are interested in seeing. Anyway, thank you for clicking on the video.